Today we have a guest episode, and my guest is Debbie Kerr-Henry. She is a creative nonfiction writer who also finds joy as a volunteer, not the kind who bakes cookies for the PTA events, but the kind who leads momentous causes. These days, she is the Toastmasters sponsor of the Unlimited Gavel Club at Tomoka Correctional Institution, where she supports approximately 60 men as they develop their communication and leadership skills through writing, speaking, and debating. Back in the day, Debbie earned an English journalism degree, worked in the publishing industry, and then settled in as a homemaker and mom. She took her mom job most seriously for fear of messing up other human beings. Parenting proved harder than cleaning toilets at Holiday Inn when she was a teen. At least then she could clock out. Amen. Now in her silver-haired season, her expertise lies in seeing value in all of life, its strengths and struggles, joys and sorrows. So we're doing this episode because later this month, Debbie and I are hosting a virtual event with the men of the Unlimited Gavel Club from Tomoka Correctional Institution so that they can share their experience and insights about their substance use. And Debbie and I wanted to share this free virtual event because we believe that they have a lot of value to offer anybody who wants to better understand substance use. So, Debbie, thank you for being here to share about this today.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure. I appreciate you inviting me.
And, this is the third time that you've been on the podcast. We have so many things that we both want to do that we keep getting together to share them.
Yeah, our paths keep crossing.
Yeah. So, let's talk about the volunteering that you're doing at Tomoka and sponsoring the Unlimited Gavel Club. So you've been doing that for like a year and a half now. So what got you started doing that work?
Well, I guess to answer that, I first need to let your listeners know what the Unlimited Gavel Club is. It is a Toastmasters affiliate club, excuse me, in Daytona Beach within Tomoka Correctional Institution. And for those of you who may not be familiar with Toastmasters, Toastmasters is an international organization that focuses on developing communication and leadership skills, resulting in greater self-confidence and personal growth. So Toastmasters sponsors this club within Tomoka Correctional Institution, and it consists of about 60 men who are all trying to better themselves through learning how to be better communicators and leaders. I have been curious about these gavel clubs within prisons for several years now. I have a good friend who lives in Tallahassee who is also a Toastmaster, and he's been involved in going into these prisons and working with these clubs. And it wasn't until about a year and a half ago, through just circumstances beyond my control, that just kind of fell into place, that I was finally able to visit this gavel club here in my county. And the first time I stepped into the library where they meet, I just knew I was meant to be there. And so I've been there almost every week since the first time I stepped in.
So I guess that was the moment you realized that was what you were meant to do.
Yeah, it was so interesting, and I can't even tell you why exactly. I just, when you just know something is right and you can't really explain it. That's how it was for me. And the irony in that is I never dreamed of ever volunteering in a prison, and especially in a men's prison. I would much rather be in a women's prison, but I don't know, just life throws you these different curveballs, and sometimes they just work out. And um, I my biological father was in prison for I don't even know for sure how long, but for abusing my siblings and me when we were young, and lost his parenting rights. And my husband, when he was only 2, his father was murdered, and his mother then was a single mom of 3 young ones, and she was pregnant with her 4th when this happened. So honestly, I have every reason not to go into a prison and support, um, incarcerated people who have committed crimes that have changed people's lives. But I have to tell you, it's been a transformative experience for me just as much as for them, and I think that's why I'm there.
Yeah, I love that. I remember the first time you went when we talked afterwards that I just felt this light in you about it, and I knew that
Mm.
something special had happened. So, can you tell us what happens in one of their Unlimited Gavel Club meetings?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. Again, focusing on communication and leadership skills. At every meeting, there are speakers, and they have a 2-hour long meeting. So they typically have about 4 speakers, and each speaker is assigned an evaluator. So another Gavalier will provide them feedback about their speech, helpful feedback. This is what you did well, and here are some suggestions that you might want to consider to improve on your next speech. There's also a Toastmaster who leads the whole speech. We have functionaries who um, think about like the timing. They help us with the timing. They help with watching filler words. All that to say, there are a lot of men involved in this meeting who are in speaking roles and or leadership roles, and so every week they are practicing hands-on practice of communication and leadership. So it's a lot's going on, and it's so fascinating and interesting to me to listen to their speeches and their evaluations, and the whole meeting is always so empowering.
Mhm. Yeah, they're so impressive. I attended one of their debates, and that's one of the reasons that I was so drawn to do this with you. I was just so moved and impressed. It was absolutely incredible. Um, so why do you think that this Unlimited Gavel Club is so important to them? What do you think it gives them?
Well, I the mission of Toastmasters is actually is resulting in greater self-confidence and personal growth. And all of the men in the Gavel Club are seeking that. And what I have witnessed with them is that they are not just seeking self-confidence and personal growth just for the sake of themselves, but they are doing it for the greater good. They are no longer just thinking about themselves in all of this and just I just want to get out of prison. They're they're literally thinking about how can I contribute to my community even while I'm here behind these barbed wired walls? How can I get my voice out there to contribute to societal solutions? And so that's why they're there. They're there to better themselves for the betterment of all.
I love that. It's very inspiring to see what they're doing with their time there and the difference that it can make in their lives and what we can learn from them. Do you want to tell me a little bit more about the men that are in the group? Maybe some things that were surprising to you, what you learned about them?
Sure. I'm going to read their Gavel Club pledge to begin with, and that will give us a good sense of what this club is about. And I have to preface this by saying they know this pledge. They don't read it at every meeting, they say it from memory and with passion. I'm going to read it because it's a long mission. It's a long pledge. It says, as an unlimited Gavalier, I solemnly pledge to improve my ability to communicate effectively, to help other club members do the same by listening analytically, and to provide fair and constructive evaluations in their efforts towards self improvement. I will practice a daily life of good character integrity, and respect for others. And I will be honest in all verbal and written communications, and to the best of my ability, perform all Gavel Club tasks satisfactorily. Finally, I will endeavor to influence others to improve their ability to communicate by nurturing the skills I have learned as a member of the Unlimited Gavel Club. And I see them doing that. And I have to say, I'll add this as well. The first time I visited the Gavel Club, somebody came up to me and said, I always ask the volunteers what they thought of prison before they actually came into a prison. And he was wondering, what my perspective was. And I had to pause and think about that. And I finally said, you know what? I really don't know what my perspective was, because I had no idea really what it was like to be inside of a prison. We see a lot of things on TV, and they typically focus on the I don't know, the gangs and the violence and the abuse, and that is all very true. But Tomoka Correctional Institution is an incentivized prison, and I'm not going to really go into that very much because we're going to talk about that the night of the event. But just so your viewers or your listeners understand, an incentivized prison is one that the men have to earn the right to be there. And then they're given the opportunities to take classes and go through programs and learn skills and different things. The Gavel Club is one of those programs to better themselves. And it's all required to live at an incentivized prison. There's 7 incentivized prisons in the state of Florida out of about 134 prisons, just to give you an idea.
Mm. That question that you were asked about what you thought about prisons before you went, I was thinking as I was listening to you that it's kind of like substance use disorder. I didn't think about it much until it impacted me. I didn't have really much of an opinion. This wasn't a
Yeah.
thing that impacted my life. And then, as a couple of people who I love deeply were in prison, then I started paying more attention. I started having more of an opinion about it. So, which is another reason why I wanted to be involved in this with you. But it's so interesting to think about how we don't really think about these things until they touch our lives.
Yeah. And that's so interesting you bring that up, Heather, because there are in the United States about 1 in 100 people are incarcerated. And so if you think about that, all of us are probably impacted or know someone or know of someone who is in prison. Yet we put these people in prison and we just kind of forget about them, that there's all these communities within prisons of human beings. And so yeah, we would like to forget about it, but honestly, what's going on in our prisons affects us. And it does affect our communities too, because these men and women, a lot of them are coming out of prison and coming back into our communities. So it's to everybody's benefit that they come out of prison much better than they were going into prison.
Hmm. Yeah, that's so important. And to think about it that way, like they are still a part of our community and we are all stronger together. And along those lines, what have you seen shift in them as they've grown as leaders and speakers?
Definitely what I experience every week when I go in there is I witness men who continue to try. One of the scariest things to do for most of us is to do public speaking, right? It's one of the scariest things. And so, if you can overcome public speaking, you gain a lot of self confidence. I've seen men from the very first time they've stood up in front of the Gavel Club guys, shaking, their voice shaking, and men in the audience saying, You got this. You got this. Come on, you got this. And to, you know, months later, that same person standing up with more self confidence and speaking with confidence. So that's what I see a lot of the growing of the self confidence. They become more intentional, they find more purpose in who they are. And they also have this desire to improve themselves, not just for themselves, but for the betterment of all. Like I said before, they learn what community is about. This group of men, they are living a community and they have to be able to understand that when they leave prison. They have to be able to know how to contribute positively to a community. And they're doing that within the Gavel Club, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I was just wondering if, and you might not even know the answer to this, but if this, like, it might be the first time they've been a part of something bigger than them, you know?
Well, yeah, and I don't know the answer to that, but this is my first thought. Um, just listening to their speeches and hearing some of their stories. And I also taught a 12-week writing class, so I got to hear a lot of their stories through their writing. So there's a lot of brokenness in their stories. And so many of them have become, they were part of communities, but not healthy communities.
Mm.
They're looking for those communities because maybe they didn't have it within their families or whatever reason. There's a lot of different reasons why people are in prison. It's not always because of broken families, but that is a big common denominator. So yeah, learning how to be part of a community in a positive and healthy way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was thinking about really how brave it is to overcome the fear of public speaking. It's been a huge fear for me. I've been that person standing in front of people shaking, my voice is shaking, wondering if my if my pants are shaking as bad as my legs are, like if everybody can see it and overcoming that, it's amazing. I mean, and it really, I couldn't have done the retreat that we did together earlier this year had I not worked to overcome that public speaking. Like it opens a lot of doors. So I'd imagine it opens doors for them too.
It does. And I am so excited that you agreed to host this event because these men, their voices need to be heard. They are powerful voices. And that is what we're trying to do is regardless of this physical wall that they live behind, we're really trying to get their voices out there because they can speak and they have messages to speak that are beneficial to us, all of us.
Yeah, they do. So is there any story that stands out to you? Some kind of transformation or anything that's really moved you?
Well, let me tell you, there are so many stories. I wouldn't even want to pinpoint just one. So I'll just say this. The guys are going to be telling some of those stories the night of this event, and I would not even begin to do justice to their story. So I'm going to leave their stories to them and just encourage your listeners to come to this event and listen to them because you will not regret it. It will be the best time you've spent, I believe. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I
Yep.
agree with you. I'm so touched by the one that I went to. I'm glad to get to do this again. So then what does it mean to you to help them get these stories out so that they can be heard and other people can value them?
Yeah, for me, it just makes sense that the very people who contributed to, problems in our communities might very well be the same people who can contribute solutions that if they have been rehabilitated and restored, they have a lot of wisdom about the reasons why crime has happened and they have answers and thoughts about how we can overcome and change these statistics. And so to me, I think we all get kind of tired of hearing our politicians think that they know all the answers. And it's like, hello, here's some people that really have some answers that could be helpful, you know? So I guess that's why I want them to be able to speak. And I don't know about you, Heather, but I have felt in my life that, like, if you can just think about a time when you didn't feel heard or understood. I can think of so many times, like I was the youngest of 5 kids in my family. Nobody listened to me, you know? And I can tell you many other examples, and it doesn't feel good to not feel heard and understood. And so I guess I kind of want to support that too, giving them a platform to be heard because they have plenty of things that are valuable for us to listen to.
Yeah, when you were talking about them, the people who cause the problems also might have the best solutions. I thought of that movie Catch Me If You Can with Leonardo DiCaprio, and it was about he had written all of those fake checks and was doing all these things, and he ended up being the person who created all the solutions for that as well after he was caught.
Yeah. Yeah, and I haven't seen that movie, but it sounds like a really good example, right? And again, going back to, this is a group of men who are in an incentivized prison who are doing the work to better themselves. So there's a difference. You know, we do have a lot of prisons that are just about punitive things, but incentivized prisons are about restoring dignity and human beings. And that's the type of program this is. And so, yeah, I think they are so ready to contribute to solutions, and we need to allow them to do that.
Yeah. So not everybody thinks of people who are incarcerated as having that wisdom to share or, wisdom about substance use recovery. So why do you think that their perspectives are so important here?
Well, I actually asked them this question because I wanted to hear from them, you know, and I'm just going to, I guess, list seven reasons. The first one is this topic of substance use is very close to their hearts. A big percentage of our incarcerated people have been affected by substance use. So it's a topic that the men of the Gavel Club have chosen to focus on with their speeches when they speak outside of Tomoka. This is an area that they want to keep speaking on. So that's the number one. The first reason is close to their hearts. Number two, they they know firsthand the mind of the user before and after recovery. They know it because they've been there. Number three, they understand and can speak to words like shame and guilt. And these are words that I think are good for us to examine, right? And number four, they actually know kind of the traits and vices and the tricks, if you will, of what users do. And so they can share some of that wisdom to help educate parents. Number five, they understand why people use. There's lots of different reasons, and they get it. They understand why people use, and they can speak to that. Number six, they they explain that, you know, even in prison, there's a spectrum of people who have been affected by substance use, from poor people all the way to wealthy and everywhere in between. So they can speak to that spectrum too. And then the last thing I wanted to bring up, and I think this is really important for your listeners, Heather, is one of the Gavaliers said, you know what? One thing my mother told me was, I just feel like this is my fault. And, you know, being a mother, you being a mother, I just think that is such a a big thing with parents who are trying to support loved ones with substance use that, oh, there's just so much guilt and what could I have done differently? It's my fault. And the Cavaliers can speak to that too, and they want to speak to that.
Yeah. Yeah, there are so many good things in there.
Mm.
And I was thinking about how important it's been for me to, when I can understand what somebody else is going through, it makes it so much easier for me to have compassion. There's less fear when I understand. And so I think that that's a huge value in this. But what else do you think that parents will get out of hearing their stories?
Well, I hopefully they will leave just more hopeful for one. And I think that they will leave a little more educated. And I also hope that they will leave just feeling more just lighter, as in a little less beaten down, so just more hope, more educated, and a little less beaten down after this event.
Yeah, and what the word that just popped in my mind was connection because I felt a lot of
Mm.
connection when I went to that debate. I felt this connection to share more of their work.
Thank you. And I know I'm saying thank you for them because I know they're so appreciative of you, Heather, to support their work. And I do want to say this because you brought up the debate a couple times. They've done 2 debates now because they have the ability to have these virtual meetings now, which is so cool. And they have a huge debate coming up the end of September that we will be advertising, and it's against a team of college students. And this is going to be huge. One of the colleges, in fact, is Wiley, which is the college from The Great Debate, that movie. And so, anyway, I just bring this up because they are wonderful speakers, and the Unlimited Gavel Club, they're doing really good things to get their voices out there to contribute to solutions in our communities. I'm really proud to be their sponsor.
Yeah, I'll make sure that I share about that. And then, but if somebody is listening and they want to make sure they get all the updates about these things, are you sending people like information out to people on your email list? How can they make sure they know what's going on?
Yeah, so I'm doing that. I'm sending all this out to, like you just said, on my email list. I will be posting this probably today on my website, on the main page and on the blog page, which brings me to this as well. The Cavaliers have been writing stories, and I've been posting those stories on my blog on momentusliving.com. And so I'll have the flyer for this event there as well. And there's a QR code that you can click on to register for this event. I think we're only allowing 100 people to register, correct, Heather? So it's important if you want to attend this, you need to just register if you know that you're going to be there.
Yeah, yeah, and then make sure you get on early to make sure you get in just in case somehow more than 100 people show up, because I think that the more people hear about this, the more they're going to want to attend. I'll be sharing the links in my the episode notes, and I'll send it out in my email and on social media. But is there anything else that you want to share before we end, Debbie?
I guess where maybe this is where I should end. Just, the Unlimited Gavel Club, the men of the Unlimited Gavel Club are truly unlimited. They chose the name of their club for a reason. They truly are unlimited and striving to better themselves for the betterment of all, which aligns so well with my mantra of better self, better world. And so that's why I continue to go into Tomoka every week and just encourage them as they continue to encourage me.
Yeah, I love that. And we didn't mention the date, which is July 30th, and it'll be from 5:45 to 7:15, which all that information will be on Debbie's website and in the show notes, but I just wanted to mention it here. Thank you so much for just one thing I know about you is, through our friendship, I've seen how community involvement is so important to you. And I just want to thank you for being an example of that to me with the work that you're doing with the Unlimited Gavel Club. I know that you get a lot out of it personally too, but I really look up to that in you, and it makes me think about community more and gives me the opportunity to share this experience with the listeners of this podcast. So thank you for being here and sharing this with us today.
I appreciate that, Heather. And if I can uh, just say one more thing about that is, we live in this global world and life can be so overwhelming, right? Because we see things from a global perspective and we can often get lost in just what I do doesn't matter because everything is so big and we can get overwhelmed in that too. And so the whole thing about community, from my perspective, is just start in your community and focus on your community. And if we all do that, then we do have a global impact.
Yeah, I love that because it does have a ripple effect, whether we can see it or not.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you, Heather. It's always a pleasure.